Being single in 2026 costs you $14,000 more a year than being a couple, not because of your spending habits, not because of your lifestyle choices, because the entire financial architecture of this country was built for two people, and nobody told you that you were living in a building that was never designed for you. If you have ever looked at your bank account at the end of the month and thought, I am doing everything right, why does this still feel impossible? I want you to hear something. It is not you. There is a $14,000 structural penalty that the system charges you for living alone. It shows up in your rent. It shows up in your tax return. It shows up in your grocery bill, your subscriptions, your insurance, your travel. And in 2026, it just got significantly worse. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly where it comes from, why it got bigger this year, and the 5 specific things you can do right now to start clawing some of it back. Let me show you the number that reframes everything. In 2026, 54% of a single person's income goes to household bills, rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, the fixed costs of simply existing. For a couple on the same combined salary, that number is 28%. Same economy, same inflation, same country, half the financial breathing room just because there's only one of you paying the bills. I want to make this concrete for you. Let me introduce 2 people. Lauren and Jason. They earn $115,000 a year combined. After they split the rent on their 2-bedroom apartment, split the utilities, split the groceries, split the streaming subscriptions, split the car insurance, they have breathing room. They have a vacation fund. They have a savings for a down payment. They went to Disney last summer. Now meet Sam. Sam also earns $115,000 a year. Same salary, same city, same cost of living. Sam is still renting. Sam's mortgage application got rejected because there was only one income on it. Sam is splitting a 2-bedroom apartment with a roommate in their 30s because the alternative, a 1-bedroom alone, would eat 54% of their take-home pay before they bought a single thing. The only variable between Lauren and Jason and Sam is the number of people splitting the fixed costs. That's it. That is the whole thing. And that difference adds up to $14,000 a year. Not $14,000 in rent, not $14,000 in any one category. $14,000 spread invisibly across every single bill you pay, every month, every year, for as long as you live alone. Now, here's where it gets interesting, because what I just described, the housing cost gap, the bill-splitting disadvantage, that part has been true for decades. That part is just math. But in 2026, the single tax didn't just stay the same. It got written into law permanently. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act was signed on July 4, 2025, and buried inside it, underneath the headlines about tariffs and tax cuts, is a set of provisions that made the financial gap between single and married Americans bigger, more permanent, and in some cases, more punishing than it has ever been. Let me walk you through it. The standard deduction. For a married couple filing jointly in 2026, the standard deduction is $32,200. For a single filer, it is $16,100, exactly half, not roughly half, not approximately half, exactly half, to the dollar. That is not a coincidence. That is a policy choice that someone sat in a room and made, and nobody talked about it. The overtime provision. The bill includes a no tax on overtime clause, which sounds like a win for everyone. And for married couples, it largely is. Their cap is $25,000. For a single person, the cap is $12,500. Half. So if you're a single person working overtime shifts specifically to get ahead, specifically because you don't have a second income to rely on, you hit the tax benefit ceiling at exactly the halfway point of what a married person receives. The senior deduction. New $6,000 deduction for Americans over 65. Wonderful. Except it doubles to $12,000 if you're married, provided both spouses are over 65. Single seniors, people growing old alone, often women, often on fixed incomes, pay more in tax in 2026 for the crime of not having a spouse. And then there are the Trump accounts, launching July 4, 2026. New tax-advantaged children's IRAs with a $1,000 government seed payment. It's genuinely a good wealth-building vehicle. And if you're a single person without children, you're entirely locked out of it. Another compounding mechanism that does not exist for you. Lauren and Jason have already opened one for their daughter. Sam did not qualify. The legislative stuff is the big picture, but the single tax doesn't just show up once a year on your tax return. It shows up every single day, in small ways, in ways that are so normalized that most people have stopped noticing them. Let me run through them quickly, because once you start seeing them, you cannot unsee them. Groceries. Food inflation in 2026 is already brutal. We're running 3 to 6% higher than last year and rising, and it hits single shoppers harder than anyone. Ready meals for two are cheaper per person than ready meals for one. Bulk buying at Costco, which is genuinely the most cost-effective way to shop, leads to waste if you're feeding one person. The entire pricing architecture of the food industry assumes a household. You are not a household. You are a person, and you pay a premium for it every single week. Subscriptions. Your Netflix costs the same as the Netflix in a household of 5. The family plan, which costs a fraction more, is split across multiple people. Singles pay up to 40% more per person for identical digital access to the same content. Spotify, YouTube Premium, Apple One. Every single family plan in the subscription economy is priced assuming you have someone to share it with. Travel. The single supplement. This one has been around forever, and it's never been fixed because the industry has absolutely no incentive to fix it. An hotel room costs the same for one person as it does for two people sharing. Every solo trip you take, you are paying double the per-person lodging cost that a couple pays. On a weekend away, that can be $150 extra. On a week abroad, it can be $500 every year, just for going alone. Insurance, multi-car discounts, multi-driver bundling, home and auto packages. The entire structure of the insurance market rewards shared risk profiles. Solo drivers, solo homeowners, solo renters, they absorb the full cost profile with no one to split it. And then there's gas. $4.05 per gallon as of this week. Lauren and Jason carpool to work on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Sam drives alone every day, absorbing every cent of the fuel cost on a single income. At current prices, the inability to split commuting costs adds up to hundreds of dollars a year before you get to the structural stuff. None of these are your fault. All of them are priced assuming you have someone to split, and you don't. And nobody built a system that accounts for that. I want to talk about something that I think most people in this conversation are not saying out loud because it's uncomfortable and it's real. 1 in 5 young adults in 2026 is staying in a relationship they want to leave. Not because they're working on things, not because they still love the person, not because therapy is helping, because they ran the numbers. They looked at what their half of the rent is right now, and they looked at what their rent would be alone, and the single tax, the $14,000 annual penalty for living alone, made leaving financially impossible. On Reddit, there's a thread that's been going for months, and the recurring theme is this. The 2026 economy is basically forcing people into relationships because co-living is the only way to escape your parents' home. Let me say that again. The economy is forcing people into relationships, not love, not compatibility, not shared values. Economic necessity. There is also what people are calling the overqualified trap. Solo earners, people with years of experience, solid careers, genuinely impressive resumes, stuck in entry-level housing because they lack a second income on the mortgage application. Not because they can't afford a house, because the mortgage qualification system was built for two people and one person earning the same amount does not qualify the same way. And then there is the ramen versus Disney divide. $115,000 a year lets Lauren and Jason afford a mortgage, a vacation fund, and a Disney trip. $115,000 a year for Sam in the same city means still renting, still splitting an apartment, still watching the down payment savings account grow at a pace that makes homeownership feel like a theoretical concept. Same salary, completely different life, and the difference is structural, not personal. We have built an economy where leaving a bad relationship is a financial luxury. That is what I want you to sit with, not as a political statement, not as a rant, just as a fact. We built this, and most of us are living inside it without a name for what it costs. Here is the thing that I keep coming back to when I think about all of this. In 1950, being single was a social choice, not always an easy one, not always a celebrated one, but it was infrastructurally supported. Boarding houses existed, affordable studio apartments existed, service economies built around the single person existed. The world had been designed to accommodate the possibility of living alone. In 2026, being single is a luxury brand that most Americans can no longer afford. That shift did not happen because people changed. It did not happen because single people became worse with money or more irresponsible or less disciplined. It happened because the architecture of the economy changed, because housing policy changed, because tax policy changed, because the pricing infrastructure of every industry from streaming to groceries to travel was quietly rebuilt around the assumption of a household unit, and nobody updated the floor plan for the people living alone inside it. This is not personal failure. This is architectural. The building was designed for two people, and a growing number of Americans, by choice, by circumstance, by timing, by loss, are trying to live in it alone, and they are being charged extra for the privilege. The single tax is not a new problem, but in 2026, with the OBBBA, with food inflation, with the housing market, with gas at $4 a gallon, it has become a more expensive one, and it deserves a name. So, what are people actually doing about it right now? Because here's the thing about the communities I've been watching over the last few months on r/poverty finance and r/single and happy. There is a lot of justified anger, but there is also something else happening. There is a quiet, practical, slightly scrappy movement of people who have decided they are going to play the game that exists rather than wait for the game to change. People are running no-buy 2026 challenges specifically framed around single-person budgeting, not the generic no-buy challenge, the version that accounts for the fact that bulk buying doesn't work for one person, that subscription splitting requires coordination, that every financial tip that assumes a partner needs to be recalculated. People are using ChatGPT specifically to comb through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act and find single-filer deductions that their accountants did not flag, and they're finding things. The SALT phase-out thresholds for individual versus joint filers, specific overtime structures that can be legally optimized, deductions that exist but require you to know to ask for them. Here's the thing about that. Most accountants optimize for the average filer, and the average filer, according to the assumptions baked into most tax software, is married. If you're single and you have never specifically asked your accountant to optimize your return for a single filer, there's a meaningful chance you're leaving money on the table. People are doing what I'm going to call Costco splits, finding one other single person, doing a monthly bulk shop together, and splitting the haul. Bulk pricing without the waste. No partnership required, just coordination. And a growing number of people are exploring what the communities are calling the lone wolf strategy. Micro-gardening, bartering services with neighbors for food, AI budgeting tools to find the gaps that the coupled household financial advice industry never bothers to look for. None of this fixes the $14,000 structural penalty, but it chips away at it. And right now, chipping away at it is the most honest thing I can tell you to do. All right, 5 moves. I'm calling them the single reset. These are not fixes to a structural problem. I want to be honest about that. None of these fixes the fact that the tax code charges you more for being alone, but they are the 5 most effective ways to reduce what the single tax actually costs you in 2026. Reset 1. Run the ChatGPT tax audit. Open ChatGPT this week and ask it to find every single filer deduction available in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that a person in your income bracket might be missing. Specifically ask about SALT phase-out thresholds for individual versus joint filers. Specifically ask about overtime structuring. Specifically ask it to compare your likely tax position as a single filer against what a married filer in the same income range would receive. This conversation could recover between $500 and $2,000 on your next return. Your accountant may not have done this optimization automatically because the default assumption is married. Reset 2. Run the house hacking calculation. The single largest driver of the $14,000 gap is housing. The single most effective structural fix is house hacking, buying a property and renting out one room, one unit, or one floor. A single person who rents out one room in a property they own can reduce their effective housing cost to near zero. The math on this has always worked. In 2026, with rents at $2,200 a month for one bedroom, it works better than it ever has. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm saying it's the single highest leverage financial move available to a solo earner right now.
Run the numbers. Even if you cannot act on it today, knowing the math changes how you think about every financial decision between now and when you can. Reset 3. Audit and split every subscription. Open your bank statement and find every subscription you are paying for alone at single or standard pricing. For each one, identify one person in your life, a sibling, a friend, a neighbor, a colleague, who could split a family plan with you. Netflix, Spotify, Apple One, YouTube Premium, iCloud storage. The 40% per person savings on subscription costs is immediate. It requires no lifestyle change, and it's available this week. It's the fastest single action in this entire list. Reset 4. Find your Costco partner. Find one other single person and coordinate a monthly bulk shop run.
You do not need to be friends. You do not need to like the same food. You need to be two people who both want to pay Costco prices without generating Costco waste. This already exists informally in the red/poverty finance community. There are people organizing it right now. The grocery inflation data tells us that food costs are going up another 3 to 6% over the next 6 months due to the fertilizer supply disruption from the Middle East conflict. Getting bulk pricing locked in before that hits is a direct financial win. Reset 5. Add a variable income layer. The single tax is fundamentally a fixed cost problem. You are paying the same fixed costs, rent, utilities, insurance, on one income that couples are paying on two. Cutting expenses helps, but the fastest mathematical solution to a fixed cost problem is a variable income layer. Even $500 a month in additional income changes the 54% household bill ratio more dramatically than almost any amount of cutting. One freelance client, one evening of tutoring, one digital product, one service you can barter or sell. Sam just picked up a freelance project, 40 hours across 2 months, $400. It is not a salary, it is not a solution, but it moved Sam's household bill ratio from 54% to 49%. And that 5-point shift is the difference between feeling like you are drowning and feeling like you have a margin. Here's where we are. The single tax is real. It is $14,000 a year. It is structural, it is legislative, and in 2026, it got bigger. It shows up in your rent, your tax return, your grocery bill, your streaming account, your insurance premium, your mortgage application, your hotel room, your gas tank. It is not a reflection of your discipline or your intelligence or your choices. It is a reflection of a system that was architected for two people and has never been seriously redesigned for one. The 5 resets I just walked you through are not fixes. I want to be clear about that. They are ways to reduce the cost of a problem that should not exist. And I think there's something important in naming that distinction between optimizing inside a broken system and pretending the system is not broken. Both things can be true. The system is broken, and you still have to live inside it. So you might as well do it as cheaply and as strategically as possible. If this video gave you language for something you've been feeling for a while, if it named something that's been sitting in your chest as vague financial anxiety and made it concrete, that was the whole point. Send it to one person who needs to hear it. Not for me, for them, because this conversation is happening in a lot of private group chats and a lot of late-night Reddit threads and a lot of solo apartments where someone is staring at their bank account trying to figure out why they can't get ahead. They deserve to know it's not them. I'll see you in the next one.